The morning sun barely touched the horizon when Sarah walked through the airport terminal. She carried a small bag and wore her usual plain clothes. Nobody looked at her twice. She was just another face in the crowd, someone who blended into the background. That was how she liked it. For 15 years, she had worked at the airport in different roles. She cleaned planes, helped with luggage, and sometimes worked at the information desk. People never remembered her name. They called her ma'am, or excuse me, or sometimes they didn't call her anything at all. Sarah didn't mind being invisible. She had learned long ago that being quiet meant being safe. Her childhood had taught her to stay in the shadows. Her father had been a pilot, a brilliant one, who died in a crash when she was 12. After his death, her mother became distant and cold. Sarah raised herself, spending hours reading her father's old flight manuals and journals. She memorized every page, every diagram, every emergency procedure. It was her way of staying close to him. Now, at 37, she lived alone in a small apartment near the airport. She had no close friends and no family left. Her mother had passed away 5 years ago without them ever truly reconnecting. Work was her life, and the airport was her home. She knew every corner of it, every sound, every smell. She could tell when a plane's engine sounded wrong just by listening. She noticed things others missed, like a loose panel or a leaking fuel line. But when she reported these things, mechanics would check and fix them without ever asking her name. On this particular Tuesday morning, Sarah was assigned to clean a large passenger jet that had just arrived from overseas. The flight crew was tired and eager to leave. They barely nodded at her as they passed. She pushed her cleaning cart down the narrow aisle, picking up newspapers and empty cups. The plane smelled like coffee and recycled air. Through the windows, she could see other planes taking off and landing. The airport was busy as always, full of people rushing to catch flights or reunite with loved ones. Sarah wondered what it felt like to have someone waiting for you, someone who knew your name and cared if you arrived safely. She pushed the thought away and continued working, her hands moving automatically through tasks she had done thousands of times before. She had no idea that in just a few hours, everything would change. Sarah was finishing her work in the cockpit when she heard shouting from the terminal. She looked up from wiping down the control panels. Through the windows, she could see people running. Something was wrong. She quickly gathered her supplies and hurried off the plane. The terminal was in chaos. Passengers were crying, and airport staff were talking urgently into their radios. Sarah grabbed the arm of a security guard she recognized. "What happened?" she asked. The guard's face was pale. "Flight 227 took off 10 minutes ago. The pilot just radioed in. He's having a heart attack. The co-pilot is trying to handle it, but she's never flown this route before, and there's a massive storm system moving in. She's panicking. They have 215 passengers on board." Sarah felt her heart skip. Flight 227? She knew that plane. She had cleaned it yesterday. It was heading to Chicago, a 3-hour flight. "What are they doing?" she asked. The guard shook his head. "Air traffic control is trying to talk her through it, but she's overwhelmed. The pilot is unconscious now. They're looking for any available pilots in the airport, but everyone is already in the air or too far away to help in time." Sarah looked around. Airport managers were on their phones, their faces tight with worry. Passengers waiting for other flights were glued to the TV screens, showing breaking news about the emergency. She heard someone say the co-pilot was only 25 years old on her first month with the airline. Sarah's mind raced. She thought about those 215 people in the sky. She thought about families, children, people with lives and dreams. She thought about her father and how he had always said, "A good pilot stays calm no matter what." For 15 years, she had stayed invisible. For 15 years, she had kept her knowledge hidden, afraid that speaking up would bring attention she didn't want. But now, people were in danger. Real people who needed help. Sarah took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "I can help," she said to the guard. He looked at her confused. "What?" Sarah spoke louder. "I can help the co-pilot. I know how to fly. I know that route. I've studied it hundreds of times." The guard stared at her like she was crazy. "You're a cleaning lady," he said, not unkindly, just stating a fact. Sarah met his eyes. "I'm also a pilot's daughter, and right now, I'm the only chance those people have." Within minutes, Sarah was standing in the air traffic control tower. The room was full of screens and flashing lights. Controllers sat at their stations, their voices tense as they managed dozens of flights. The head controller, a man named Robert, looked at Sarah with obvious doubt. "This is insane," he said. "You clean planes? You're not certified. You've never even been in a real cockpit during flight." But she also knew she was right. "My father was Captain James Mitchell. He flew for 30 years. After he died, I studied everything he left behind. I know every procedure, every emergency protocol. I've memorized flight patterns, weather systems, and aircraft specifications. I know that plane better than anyone here." Robert hesitated. Through the radio, they could hear the co-pilot's voice. She was crying, her words coming out in gasps. "I can't do this. There's too much. The instruments are showing warnings. The storm is getting closer. I don't know what to do." One of the controllers looked at Robert. "We're running out of options. The nearest qualified pilot is 40 minutes away. That storm will hit them in 20. Robert looked at Sarah for a long moment. Then he made his decision. He handed her a headset. "If this goes wrong, we're all finished," he said. Sarah put on the headset. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. "Flight 227, this is ground control. My name is Sarah. I'm here to help you get home safely." On the plane, co-pilot Jennifer Harris was shaking so hard she could barely hold the controls. Tears ran down her face. The captain lay unconscious beside her. Warning lights blinked on the control panel. Outside the windows, dark clouds were gathering. The passengers behind her were quiet, too scared to even cry. When Sarah's voice came through her headset, calm and clear, Jennifer felt a small spark of hope. "Who are you?" Jennifer asked. Sarah smiled, even though no one could see her. "I'm someone who knows this plane and this route. I'm going to walk you through everything step by step. But first, I need you to take a deep breath. Can you do that for me?" Jennifer breathed in shakily. "Good," Sarah said. "Now, tell me exactly what you see on your instruments." For the next few minutes, Sarah listened carefully as Jennifer described every gauge. Every warning light, every reading. In the control tower, the other controllers watched in amazement. Sarah's questions were precise and professional. She knew exactly what to ask. Robert pulled up Sarah's employee file on his computer. There was nothing there about flight training or certification. Just 15 years of cleaning and maintenance work. Yet here she was, talking like a seasoned pilot. "Jennifer," Sarah said, "you're doing great. The warnings you're seeing are normal for this situation. The plane is fine. Now, I need you to adjust your altitude. We're going to climb above this storm." The storm was getting worse. Lightning flashed outside the plane's windows and turbulence shook the aircraft. Passengers gripped their armrests. Some prayed. Others held hands with strangers. In the cockpit, Jennifer's fingers trembled on the controls as Sarah's voice guided her through each movement. "Increase throttle slowly. Watch your airspeed indicator. You want to maintain between 250 and 280 knots." Jennifer did as Sarah instructed. The plane climbed higher, pushing through layers of dark clouds. Rain hammered against the windshield. "I'm scared," Jennifer whispered. Sarah understood that fear. She had felt it her whole life. Fear of being seen, fear of failing, fear of not being good enough. But right now, fear didn't matter. "Fear is normal," Sarah said. "My father told me that every pilot feels fear. The difference is what you do with it. You use it to stay alert, to stay focused. And right now, you're doing everything right." In the control tower, news crews had arrived. Cameras were being set up. The story was spreading fast. A cleaning lady was talking down a plane. It sounded impossible. Robert was fielding calls from his supervisors, from airline executives, from government officials. Everyone wanted to know who Sarah was and how she knew what to do. But Robert ignored them all. He was watching Sarah work, and what he saw impressed him. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't lucky. She was skilled. Every instruction she gave was correct. Every decision was sound. She moved between technical language and simple explanations effortlessly, keeping Jennifer calm while solving complex problems. "Sarah," Jennifer said suddenly, "the captain is waking up." Sarah felt relief flood through her. "That's wonderful. But don't let him take over yet. He's been unconscious. He needs to be fully alert before he can fly." "Keep doing what you're doing," the captain groaned and opened his eyes. He looked around confused, his hand going to his chest. Jennifer quickly explained the situation. The captain listened, his face growing pale as he realized how serious things had been. He looked at the instruments and saw that despite the storm, despite everything, the plane was stable and on course. "Who's guiding you?" he asked. Jennifer smiled through her tears. "Someone named Sarah. I don't know who she is, but she's amazing." Back on the ground, Sarah continued to monitor the flight's progress. The storm was starting to clear. They were through the worst of it. But they still had an hour of flight time left, and the captain wasn't ready to take back control. Sarah walked Jennifer through the flight plan, explaining each checkpoint they would pass, each altitude change they would need to make. She described the landscape below even though it was hidden by clouds. Telling Jennifer about the rivers and mountains and cities they were flying over, it helped keep Jennifer distracted from her fear. In the tower, Sarah's co-workers had arrived. They stood at the back of the room staring in disbelief. The quiet woman who cleaned their break room was saving lives. The shy woman who never spoke up at meetings was commanding a crisis like a seasoned professional. They had never really seen her before. None of them had. As Flight 227 approached Chicago, the captain had recovered enough to assist Jennifer. But Sarah stayed on the radio, her voice a constant presence that kept them both focused. The airport had cleared a runway. Emergency vehicles lined the taxiway, their lights flashing. Ambulances waited for the captain. Fire trucks stood ready just in case. The whole world seemed to be watching. News helicopters circled at a safe distance. Inside the control tower in Sarah's home airport, silence had fallen. Everyone was holding their breath. This was the most dangerous part. Landing required precision and timing. One mistake could be catastrophic. "Jennifer," Sarah said, "you've done everything perfectly so far. This last part is just a series of small steps. We'll take them one at a time." Sarah began the landing checklist. "Lower the landing gear. Adjust flaps. Reduce speed. Check altitude." Each instruction was clear and simple. Jennifer followed them all, her confidence growing with each successful step. The captain monitored the instruments but let Jennifer handle the controls. He could see she was doing well. Whoever this Sarah was, she knew exactly what she was doing. The plane descended through the clouds. Chicago appeared below them, a sprawl of lights and buildings. The runway stretched out ahead, a thin strip of concrete that seemed impossibly small from this height. "You're lined up perfectly," Sarah said. "Airspeed is good. Altitude is good. Just keep your hands steady." The plane dropped lower. 1,000 feet. 500 feet. 200 feet. Jennifer could see people on the ground now, tiny figures watching her come in. "Almost there," Sarah encouraged. "You're doing beautifully." The wheels touched the runway with barely a bump. The plane rolled forward, slowing gradually. Jennifer engaged the brakes exactly as Sarah instructed. The aircraft came to a smooth stop. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the entire plane erupted in cheers. Passengers were crying and hugging each other. Flight attendants wiped tears from their eyes. The captain reached over and squeezed Jennifer's shoulder. "Outstanding job," he said. In the control tower, everyone burst into applause. Controllers were cheering and hugging each other. Robert pulled off his headset and looked at Sarah. She was smiling, but tears were running down her face. "You just saved 215 lives," he said. Sarah couldn't speak. The weight of what had just happened was hitting her. For 15 years she had hidden. She had stayed quiet and small, afraid to be noticed. But today, when it mattered most, she had stepped forward. She had used everything her father had taught her. She had honored his memory in the best way possible. Through the radio, Jennifer's voice came through one last time. "Sarah, are you still there?" Sarah picked up her headset. "I'm here." Jennifer's voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you. I don't know who you are, but you saved us all. You saved my life." Sarah smiled through her tears. "You've saved yourself, Jennifer. You were brave and strong. I just gave you directions. You did all the hard work." The days after the landing were overwhelming for Sarah. Her face was on every news channel. Reporters camped outside her apartment. Airlines were offering her jobs. The airline whose plane she had saved wanted to pay for her to get her pilot's license officially. She had become famous overnight. The woman nobody knew suddenly had everyone wanting to know everything about her. It was terrifying. Sarah had spent her whole life avoiding attention. Now she couldn't escape it. But something had changed inside her. When she saw the interviews with passengers from Flight 227, when she heard them talk about getting home to their families, when she saw photos of Jennifer hugging her parents at the airport, Sarah understood something important. Being invisible had felt safe, but it had also been lonely. She had hidden her gifts because she was afraid. But those gifts could help people. They had helped people. 3 months later, Sarah walked into her first day of flight school. The airline had kept their promise. They were paying for everything. Other students stared at her. They all knew who she was. The woman who talked down a plane. Their instructor introduced her to the class, and everyone applauded. Sarah felt her cheeks burn, but she smiled. She was learning to accept recognition, learning that being seen wasn't dangerous. It could be wonderful. Her instructors were amazed by her knowledge. Everything she had learned from her father's books was accurate and thorough. She excelled in every simulation. Flying came naturally to her, like she had been meant to do this all along. Her father would have been proud. One afternoon, Sarah was leaving class when she saw a familiar face. Jennifer was waiting by the door. The young co-pilot had reached out several times, wanting to meet Sarah in person. Today was finally that day. They looked at each other for a moment. Then Jennifer rushed forward and hugged her. "You're my hero," Jennifer said. Sarah hugged her back. "You're your own hero. You kept yourself together in an impossible situation. That takes real courage." They went for coffee and talked for hours. Jennifer had been promoted after the incident. She was flying regularly now, more confident than ever. She told Sarah that every time she got nervous, she remembered Sarah's calm voice and steady instructions. They became friends, two women who had survived a crisis together. 6 months after the incident, Sarah earned her commercial pilot's license. The ceremony was small, but meaningful. Robert from Air Traffic Control was there along with several of her former co-workers from the airport. Jennifer came and brought the captain from Flight 227 who had fully recovered from his heart attack. Even some passengers from that flight attended, wanting to thank Sarah one more time. As Sarah accepted her license, she thought about her journey. For so long, she had believed that being invisible was the only way to be safe. She had thought that hiding her abilities would protect her from pain and disappointment. But that day in the control tower had taught her something different. Sometimes the scariest thing is the right thing. Sometimes being brave means letting people see who you really are. Sarah got her first job flying regional routes. It wasn't glamorous. The planes were small and the flights were short. But every time she sat in the cockpit, every time she lifted off the ground, she felt her father with her. She was finally doing what she was meant to do. People knew her name now. When she walked through airports, occasionally someone would recognize her and want to shake her hand. Children would ask for her autograph. She always stopped and talked to them, remembering what it felt like to be invisible. She never wanted anyone else to feel like they had to hide their gifts. Years later, when people asked Sarah about that day, she would say it was the day she stopped being afraid. It was the day she learned that the most dangerous thing we can do is waste our talents because we're scared of being noticed. She had been invisible for so long that when she finally stepped into the light, it was blinding. But she had adjusted. She had learned to shine. And she had discovered that being seen, truly seen, was not something to fear. It was something to embrace. Because when you let people see who you really are, that's when you can make a real difference. That's when you can save lives. That's when you become who you were always meant to be.